Okay, so it looks like we can start, and it looks like we have myself, Councilman Dorsey, and then Councilman Barnett, and I think those are all the council members that we have right now. And it seems like from the council president's office, of course, we have Margaret Reed, and from the mayor's office, we have Matt Stegman. I think that's everybody. So, Ms. Donna, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, if we could bring the first slide up, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts. Thank you. I want to thank the council for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. The Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts is a 501c3 nonprofit that serves Baltimore City's Arts Council, film office, and event producer with the mission of contributing to the social, cultural, and economic development of Baltimore City. Our work centers around the following key objectives: making Baltimore and its neighborhoods more vibrant, promoting and strengthening Baltimore's reputation locally, nationally, and internationally, supporting and strengthening communities through the arts, excuse me, promoting and supporting the local creative community, supporting local art organizations, developing and producing premier events, festivals, and cultural programming, and providing art education to Baltimore City youth. We promote the positive aspects of Baltimore, which often do not receive the media attention they deserve. Opus celebrates and promotes what is best about Baltimore. Our large and varied arts and cultural assets, specifically addressing the needs of the arts community we advocate for, and we advocate for their support. We support the Public Art Commission for Baltimore City and manage the 1% for Art initiative to commission and maintain the city's significant public art collection. The Baltimore Film Office is fully supported by BOPA personnel and funding. We are currently working with the film industry to bring back productions and jobs to Baltimore. BOPA manages the top of the world tourist attraction for the city and will reopen that facility when the National Aquarium opens so that they can manage the tourism between the two entities. We also manage the Brummel-Seltzer Arts Tower. We can see the second slide. And as well as School 33 Art Center. And that provides safe space studios for visual and literary artists, as well as exhibition and performance space. And we manage the city's historic Cloisters Castle in Baltimore County. BOPA also administers the city's Creative Baltimore Fund to award much needed funds to cultural organizations throughout Baltimore City. In 2020, BOPA became the affiliate for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, making Baltimore the state representative for Maryland and enabling more than 3,000 students from the Baltimore region to participate in this prestigious national competition for the very first time. At the virtual national awards this month, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts was chosen to represent 100 national scholastic art and writing affiliates from across the country. BOPA will continue in this role in 2021, and because of last year's success, we expect that we'll be able to expand it to more students. The current COVID-19 health crisis has and will continue to present BOPA with challenges, but also opportunities. We are not able to produce Artscape in its traditional format. However, we are planning a series of robust online events scheduled for July and August, including an online artist market to enable local artists to sell their work. And on a digital platform, they have the potential to reach a much broader audience. We're also awarding $50,000 to individual artists through the Artscape Sondheim Awards. that will be broadcast on YouTube on July 16th. We're also hosting a virtual gallery of the Sondheim Award winners that will introduce a new audience to the event and to Baltimore artists because of the expanse of the digital presence and the potential to reach a broader audience beyond Baltimore City. There are additional events in the works for the summer that will be announced at a later date. We are partnering in arts education with a program that will engage 10,000 students this summer, and we will continue to look for similar opportunities as we adjust to the ever-changing environment locally, nationally, and internationally. This Sunday, I'm happy to say, we opened the Baltimore's Farmers Market as an essential food source, which will continue to operate with social distancing practices in place through December. We continue the efforts we started with the Baltimore Artists Emergency Relief Fund that raised and distributed more than $161,000 in grants to local artists in March and April of this year. In 2021, we will broaden our focus on individual artists to find additional ways to ameliorate the short and long-term economic effects of the pandemic. In 2021, we will be producing technical support training to assist local artists in finding and applying for grants. That's a need we identified from our support of the Baltimore Artists Emergency Relief Fund. We cannot currently convene large gatherings as we have traditionally. However, we continue to plan for fall events like Baltimore Book Festival, Free Fall Baltimore, and our Open Studios tour, though we are not yet sure whether they will be in-person or virtual events. We have had to move Light City to 2021 because of the current effects of the health crisis is having on travel and the fact that a significant number of light artists are based internationally. BOPA is an entrepreneurial business in that we independently raise all the money we need for products and programming through grants, sponsors, and earned revenue. Though the pandemic health crisis has significantly affected support for the arts globally, we continue our fundraising efforts to produce programs and events through fiscal year 21. We appreciate the city grant that typically covers 2/3 of BOPA's salaries and overhead. BOPA has consistently been able to leverage that investment into a $200 million annual economic impact for the city. And just as importantly, we provide and promote a full complement of the arts, an essential component for our thriving community. Thank you. The council has any questions?
I have a question, and since a lot of your budget, clearly goes to some of the events that we have during this time, it's expected with this virtual event for Artscape. Do you know the price that it's going to be doing it virtually? Is it going to save us a lot of money, or because it's virtually, it will?
Well, there are two components there. Number one, the city does not pay for Artscape. That is, we raise money, BOPA raises money for Artscape. The city does contribute in that it provides us with support for setting up Artscape, support with security and electrical services and that kind of thing. And because we are not having a actual, a physical Artscape festival, that is a huge savings to the city. So there's definitely a savings. The city will reap benefits from us not having something physical. We are still under mandate, the stay-at-home mandate as far as large gatherings. So everything that we do virtually, BOPA will pay for through our own funds.
And can you talk a little bit about youth, maybe program a little more during this time of what you're doing, I guess, virtually to reach out to them and keep that group engaged that's interested in the arts?
Yes, we are partnering with Arts Every Day, an organization we work with during the school year as well, to provide in-school training. So we are working with them this summer, and we will see how, the schools determine they're going to work in the fall to see if the program will continue. And we're doing Arts Every Day has designed a passport program, an arts passport program that has a physical passport to different cultural organizations throughout the city. And BOPA is assisting with underwriting to make that program available to 10,000 students over the summer. And it does not require them to have internet access. They can do things, there'll be a kit that's given to each family, and there'll be activities, information about our different cultural assets, pretty much every I shouldn't say large, every organization that Arts Every Day could engage will be a part of this passport program, and BOPA is proud to be part of it as well.
That sounds amazing. That's great. That's it for the questions from me. Do any of my colleagues have questions?
Madam Chair, yes, I do. But I'm not a committee member, so I would defer if there are any other committee members that have questions.
No, they're not on. So you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Donna. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, Ryan. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I just want to know how we're doing with the 1% for the arts. Is BOPA involved in tracking the 1% for the arts?
We are, I'll tell you, we're mostly engaged in trying to collect the 1% for art. That has been a huge challenge, and we're making progress. As a matter of fact, while we're doing this, there is a Public Art Commission meeting going on right now. I asked for a briefing before I came on and found out that we have worked with the city and worked with the school system to finally have a smooth channel for decommissioning art in the schools. So that is a big thing that 1% for art will support if we relocate or conserve those particular works of art. We are in the process of hiring a new person to head up the program. Right now, our Arts Council Director, Jackie Downs, is taking the full load of public art at BOPA. Ryan, who was our former person for public art, left this summer, so we are replacing him, and hopefully that will happen. It's a little difficult to hire in the middle of a pandemic, but I think we're going to be able to do it. So I would say we are moving forward with 1%, and we will be hopefully more robust in hoping to survey the collection of the city. That's one of the goals for this year, which I think we can do in the midst of a pandemic, because it requires one or two people doing that work, and then start conservation as well as commission for additional things.
Can we just have like a very basic, like matter of fact understanding about this? Two questions. Does BOPA have a statutory responsibility in executing the mission of the use of the 1% for the arts? And is there anybody who has any sort of clearly identified or statutory responsibility to identify the money? My understanding is that when, and maybe it's important for me to clarify, I asked, how are we doing in, kind of tracking the 1% for the arts? And you said something about collecting the 1% for the arts. And so I think these are two different things. One is even the city of Baltimore being clear about what its obligation is to appropriate 1% for the arts. And the next thing is actually making sure that the money is handed over. Can you speak to this concern?
We spent a very good part of this summer figuring out what the 1% of art should be from the 5 agencies that are supposed to supply that fund. And we have letters of agreement with each agency. And now we are in the process. So for your first question, yes, we have identified what the commitment is, and for each agency. And 2, we are in the process of working with the agency directors to collect the money so that it can be used for 1% for art.
So are these letters of agreement, are they is it a one-time agreement? Like, is it the money for just this year, or are we talking about letters that say henceforth this will be the process and we will voluntarily present to you what you are owed or what you are due for the 1%?
That is the
And I say that knowing that Ryan Patterson had to sit in planning commission hearings year after year, listening to these agencies present their capital budgets and make notes of what they were saying in these hearings, just in order to catch whether or not there was some money due to BOPA. They weren't coming forth and saying, here's how much is in our capital budget, therefore this is how much, this is the 1%. And so I'm wondering, when you say we spent a lot of time this summer, I want to know how many labor hours actually have had to go into BOPA simply being told, here's how much money comes, from 1%.
we decided to last year, when we were having difficulty getting that number from the different agencies, we decided to look at a new formula for collecting the money, and that is to collect it based on the previous fiscal year. Seeing as we hadn't gotten any in several years, we could go backwards and say, okay, you did not supply the 1% for art in fiscal year 19. So let's look at that year, and let's base the fiscal year 20 allotment on fiscal year 19. And that made it a little bit easier to identify it because the money had already been spent. So that's how we're doing it now. So we know exactly what to ask for. We know that it had already been allocated, spent, and was due based on the city ordinance, the 1% for art ordinance. And that's how we're collecting this year. So we're going to be a year in arrears all the time.
Okay, and so we're wrapping up FY20, and so what you're saying is that this year you looked at FY19. You said you had not been given anything in several years. When was the last time BOPA was given anything?
To be honest with you, I don't know. We started with this process early last year, and had the same experience that Ryan had, where how do we know how much it is? And the agencies themselves were not forthcoming. So it was incumbent upon us to figure out how we could collect the information. We could do the same thing. I thought sitting in, chambers and listening to capital budgets was not the most effective way to do it.
Yeah.
If we have a solid budget every year, we know what you spent. And so let's collect based on that. So that has made things a lot more efficient, not only for BOPA, but for the agencies as well. And we have had some great success. Planning is working with us. We're about to finish the agreement. We've invoiced Department of Public Works, and we're working through each of the agencies in that way. So this has been a much more successful way to collect the 1% for art.
And so this year, FY20, have you yet, you said you've invoiced. Have you received anything yet based on the FY19 expenses?
We have received some money, not the bulk of it, but as I said, we have gotten invoices out we had a person dedicated to taking a look at the expenditures, and so that we could collect that information. And now we're in the process of invoicing each of the agencies.
Great. And those 5 agencies are DPW, DOT, Rec and Parks, DGS, and
Parking Authority.
Parking Authority.
Mhm.
Thank you, Donna. Keep up the good work. This is an area of look. We can't be a city where half the population, 40 years on, still heralds Willie Don as the great, patron of Baltimore, and then not uphold one of the most remarkable aspects of his legacy in this 1% for the arts. The two just don't go together. And so I want to make sure that in this coming term, that this is something that consistently is appropriated as it's supposed to be by law. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We have a remarkable collection of public art in the city, and something we should be extremely proud of. And that's why we are working so hard to ensure that we have the funds to, number one, take care of it and continue it. So thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Sneed, you want to turn it back over to me? Okay, thank you. Thank you for stepping in while I had technical difficulties. Ms. Sawyer, I had one question. I guess it's a couple years ago now. I introduced a resolution calling for a hearing on whether our institutions that are receiving resources from the city as it relates to the events that they hold. And I know a lot of our cultural institutions not only provide, arts and other types of entertainment, but they also become venues for a variety of different events.
Yes.
And so it was one of my concerns was that when the lists were made available, because oftentimes it was difficult even acquiring the list, that many of the venues had preferred vendor lists that didn't have any MBEs on them.
Mm.
And so I'm still concerned that is still the case for some of our museums and some of our other venues. Are you aware of that, or can you speak to that? I was trying to even do some research, for example, like on, I think the Walters. I don't know if the Walters has any, minority caterer on, or let me be clear, any African American caterer on their list. And so, I've heard incidents where individuals who have events are asking specifically for a Black caterer, and they're told, well, we have caterers that can provide, ethnic cuisine. Well, I didn't ask for ethnic cuisine. I asked for a Black caterer.
Mm.
And, I'm not just looking for somebody who can make chicken wings and meatballs. And so, are you aware of that? And if so, can you speak to it, and any efforts to make certain that if these venues are receiving money from the city, then they should be open to, having the diversity that I know that we're trying to represent in our city.
Well, I agree with you. We have, as BOPA is voluntarily a part of the city's equity and inclusion task force, so we definitely have that in our venues at the Cloisters and all the other venues that we manage. But I do not have knowledge of what the other cultural institutions do. Those are separate entity. They're not under BOPA's purview. All I can say is that I hope that they have diversified or are diverse. I know the directors for most of the organizations, and I think if this past couple of weeks didn't give
That's
them
right.
a call, I don't know what will. But we've used many different African American caterers, and I know they're on our lists, and I'm happy to share what we have with those institutions.
Yes.
So, but I don't have their information. I'm sorry.
Okay, and I'll be digging deeper. It's an issue that I'm not letting go. And if you and your advocacy can share your list with others, so that it removes the excuse that there aren't any qualified, capable, caterers of diverse caterers out there. I would appreciate that as well.
Sure.
My last question speaks to the work that we initiated around the creative economy, especially filmmaking in the city. And I know this pandemic, came and it kind of interrupted some of the efforts that we were trying to move towards. But can you speak a little bit about the potential, possibly in the future for Baltimore to maybe reinvigorate some of the economy that we had around filmmaking that for a period has kind of dropped off and waned?
Well, we've spoken before about the impact of the film industry in Baltimore City, and it's generated about $1 billion in economic impact, and employed about 12,000 workers, and that's everybody from caterers to craft people to actors to film crew. So it is a huge industry, and while we did suffer a loss because of the pandemic, the one thing it did do is preserve our film credits for this year. So we will still have those storehoused for productions to come back. And I spoke with Debbie Dorsey, who's the director of the film office, and we're already preparing to bring crews back. They are the industry has been very aggressive about how to get back to work. With closed sets and closed campuses for production, they believe that they can get back to work relatively soon. As soon as, well, now that we can gather approximately 50 people in one space, then now we can get back to work. So we're already entertaining permits for TV commercials and small shoots here in the city. So that revenue will start to roll in again. We are one of the favorite places. And since Baltimore is equidistant between some of the studios in the South and New York, and I think we have the opportunity to grow that industry even more once we're past this health crisis. But even in the midst of it, I think we're going to be able to continue that effort in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland.
No, thank you. And just, thank you in general for your leadership, especially in the area of arts and culture. I really appreciate all that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate the city's support. Thank you.
Just checking to see if there are any other questions from any of my colleagues before we move to recess this hearing. So going once, going twice. Being that there's no further questions, this Budget Committee is in recess until 10:30, when we'll have Mayor's Office of Employment Development. Thank you, Ms. Sawyer, and thank your team.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.